Marvel fans must have watched the legendary Black Panther movie, The Tale of Wakanda, the Hidden African Kingdom. But what if I told you that the story you know was only inspired by something far older, something that happened centuries before the BC era? The truth is, the myth of the Black Panther did not begin in Marvel's pages. It was born from an ancient kingdom whose name we will not mention here. For reasons of secrecy, we will use the name Wakanda to represent it. In this forgotten story, the people of that kingdom remembered a warrior unlike any other, a being raised in the wild, whose strength surpassed men, and whose rage made him feared even by beasts. They did not call him Black Panther then. They called him Tannur, which in their tongue meant monster. But this monster would one day rise to become the savior of his people and the true shadow behind the legend of the Black Panther.
Long before the recorded ages, in a country hidden from maps and the eyes of strangers, stood a kingdom of wonder. This land was cut off by mountains and dense forests. Its people needed no trade. Their earth gave all they required. They kept their riches, gold, silver, rubies, emeralds and diamonds, and their craftsmen and warriors were famed among themselves as the wisest and strongest of the old world. This kingdom did not crown its rulers by blood. A king was the greatest warrior. When a man rose to challenge the throne and won, he became ruler. If no one could defeat the king within 10 years, the king ruled until he died and another victor would be chosen. It was a land of warriors and of honor. In that age a mighty warrior rose, Jagartha. Strong of arm and kind of heart, King Jagartha led his people well. The fields were full, the granaries fat, and the people loved him. He married Queen Alyssa. The palace rang with laughter and the court prospered, until the day lost foreigners wandered into their hidden realm. Hungry and amazed, the strangers were shown mercy. They carried stories back to their own lands of a secret kingdom richer and stranger than any they had known. Those whispers reached the ears of Sufitkar, the ruler of mighty Carthage, a conqueror who bent kingdoms to his will. He summoned the foreigners, rode to the hidden borders, and at last found Jagartha's kingdom.
Sufitkar saw what had been whispered and hungered for the riches. He demanded tribute, half the kingdom's wealth, twice each year. Jagartha refused. Enraged, Sufitkar withdrew to prepare his army. Jagartha readied his warriors and met the first invasion. Wakanda's weapons were advanced and its warriors brave, but its numbers were small. Carthage poured legions onto the field by the thousands. Outnumbered and seeing the slaughter mounting, Jagartha chose to spare his people from total ruin. He agreed to a terrible bargain. Wakanda would pay tribute twice a year, half their gold, half their harvest, half their wealth. But Sufitkar's appetite would not be sated. Greed turned to cruelty. He demanded 100 of Wakanda's young people every year, boys to be conscripted into his armies, girls to be taken as slaves. The heart of Jagartha broke, yet he continued to bow only to keep his people alive. For years this cruel tribute endured. Then a captive escaped Carthage and raced back to Wakanda with horror in her eyes. She told the truth. The boys were forced to fight and die. The girls were sold into chains. Jagartha resolved enough was enough. He cut off the tribute and closed the gates. The proud king chose freedom over a future of quiet slavery. Sufitkar returned with a fury that could not be bribed. He wanted the kingdom utterly. Carthage struck again with overwhelming force. Villages burned, good men died by the thousands, and the king's palace was besieged. Warriors fought with the courage of legends, but Carthage had numbers by the score, and the slaughter ran deep. In that storm of iron, Queen Alyssa bore a child. When the second invasion broke and soldiers cut a path toward the palace, Jagartha sent his most trusted warriors to escort his queen and their little daughter, Amanita, to safety. He himself rode into the battle to shield his people.
The enemy's hand was relentless. A spear meant for Queen Alyssa flew through the chaos. Jagartha threw himself into its path, and the weapon pierced his chest. He died at once, his blood staining the earth he had sworn to defend. The palace fell into ruin. Soldiers scattered. The queen, with her belly heavy and her daughter clinging to her, fled into the forest. Two of Wakanda's bravest remained to shield her. They fought until only two were left, and even they were forced to run. The Carthaginian soldiers hunted them like prey. The queen, weak and bleeding, ran until she found the only refuge she could think of, the forbidden cave. This cave, deep within the sacred forest, was a place of old and terrible legend. It was said the gods and the spirits of dead warriors lived in that place. No Wakandan child was taught to enter the cave. The elders warned that none who entered would ever return. But with her husband slain and Carthage closing, Queen Alyssa had no choice. She dragged her daughter Amanita into the dark maze. The princess's little dog slipped from her grip and bolted back toward the cave mouth. Amanita chased after it, and in that instant Carthaginian hands closed around her. Soldiers snatched the girl, screams split the trees. Alyssa lunged, trying to pull her child back, but the enemy seized Amanita and dragged her away. Queen Alyssa was left alone, wounded and broken, as the earth trembled with a sound that was not entirely of men. From the depths of the cave came a shadow, a great panther with a shape both animal and spirit. It moved like a storm, black as night, eyes like burning coals. It struck the Carthaginians with a violence that sent some fleeing and some to their deaths. They carried Amanita away, but many fell before the beast. The panther seized Queen Alyssa and dragged her deeper into the maze, not to kill her, but to test her. Alyssa, blood pouring from her wounds, had already lost her husband and her daughter. The beast spoke in a voice that rumbled not through the ears but through the bones, a choice. She could die with the child in her womb, and all would end. Or she could make a pact, the child would live, but a part of its soul would be bound to the beast. Desperate and without hope, Alyssa chose life for the child. At the panther's command, she cut her wrist and let her blood fall into a sacred calabash. The beast too cut its wrist and poured its darker essence into the same vessel. The two waters, human blood and spirit blood, mixed. Alyssa drank the mixture. The beast drank as well. Flesh and spirit braided together in a pact older than memory. Labor seized her at once. Under the cave's torchlight, Queen Alyssa pushed and a child slipped into the world, not purely human, not purely beast, but both. The newborn skin was marked with dark patterns like carved runes. The queen, having given everything, placed her necklace, the emerald she had worn, against the infant's chest, kissed him once, and died. The beast lifted the child and took him deeper into the forest. The last of Wakanda's royal line, born of sacrifice, would be raised by a panther.
Carving, burning, and pillage marked the time after. Carthage sacked the kingdom, stealing treasures and carrying captives off to be sold as slaves. Princess Amanita was taken to Carthage with others. Wakanda lay in ruin, its people scattered and enslaved. But in the haunted cave and the deep forest, the panther raised the boy as its own. They named him Tannur. Tannur grew quickly. The beast taught him to move without sound, to strike with the suddenness of night, to hunt and survive. As he matured, strange dark markings showed on his chest and arms, the signs of the blood pact. When Tannur wore clothes, he looked human, but in anger or danger he shifted. His eyes burned red, his hands became claws, his skin turned nearly impenetrable. No arrow or blade could pierce him. He could run faster than a hunter's shout. He could hear a heartbeat from far away. Years passed in shadow. Then one day Tannur heard a cry and saw a woman running through the trees, chased by a lion. He struck the lion down and saved her. The girl was frightened but safe. He did not leave her there. He walked with her to the end of the forest that same day. He escorted her through the trees until they reached the forest's edge. He had heard stories that the world did not revolve only around the forest, and seeing her and the land beyond stirred him deeply. He did not vanish that night. He stayed until he made sure she was safe. After he parted from her at the forest border, thoughts of people and the wide world filled his mind. He went back to the cave and the animal that raised him, but he could not forget what he had seen. In the days that followed, those images haunted him. He thought of the fields, the fires, and the women and children who laughed. The sight of the girl's hands, the smell of smoke, the feel of human voices, these things called to him. He decided to learn more. So he left the cave to explore the world beyond the trees. He followed the trail the girl had taken. Soon he came across a hidden village. a small place of people, quiet, living in the shade of hills. For the first time in his life, he saw a group of his kind. To his surprise, the girl he had saved was from this village. They met again because she turned and saw him from behind and recognized him. She ran to him with joy and fear, then took him to her parents. She said, "This is the one who saved me." They welcomed him in wonder and fear. The villagers soon saw his strange markings and the wildness in his ways. At first they treated him like a legend come alive. They told him small things, where to find fresh water, how to move among men without frightening them, and he learned quickly. These villagers were not strangers. They had escaped Wakanda's fall 20 years before and had lived in hiding. They had not forgotten their home. They simply hid to survive. Tannur listened and learned from them, and for the first time, he felt the shape of his own history. That night, after he returned to the cave, dreams came upon him. For 3 nights, he slept and saw visions. The war, the spear that took his father, his mother bleeding and making her bargain, the cave, and the calabash. He saw his mother place the emerald necklace against his chest. He woke trembling each morning, certain these visions were not mere dreams, but truth pressing through him. Haunted, he could not keep the secret. He confronted the panther beast in the cave and told it of the visions. The beast then told him the full truth of Jagartha's last stand, of Alyssa's flight, of the soldiers, of the capture of Amanita, and of the pact that had bound his life to the spirit. The beast showed him that it had raised him and that he had been marked from the womb. Anger and grief burned in Tannur. He returned to the hidden village and told the people what he had learned. At first they were shocked and would not believe that this wild man could be the son of a king. But then he showed them the necklace, the emerald that had been pressed to his chest when he was a newborn. He spoke of details only a child of that night could have known. The exact words his mother said, the place of the battle, the way the spear had fallen. The villagers fell silent. The old ones among them recognized the small proofs and the signs. They bowed, accepted him, and called him prince. Not long after, Carthaginian raiders discovered the village and attacked. Tannur stepped forward to defend his new people. He transformed and released the beast within, and the soldiers fell like wheat before the scythe. Arrows struck him and fell away. Men of iron and leather could not halt him. Word of the strange warrior spread fast. Enslaved people slipped their bonds and fled when they heard tales of a shadow that freed the captured. Tannur became a rumor, then a name, then a force. He hunted Carthaginian outposts, freed captives, and tore down the tents of slavers until the rumor reached the gates of Carthage itself. Zulfikar scoffed at the stories until the night his own garrisons returned in ashes. Then fear crept into his court. He gathered a vast army and rode to meet the one man who had shamed his legions. Tannur did not assemble great armies. He moved like wind and struck like lightning. He freed those he could, and wherever he struck the people rose with him. When he finally reached the plain before Carthage, armies lined the horizon and counted thousands. Zulfikar came forth in gilded armor, sword bright as day, and mocked him. "You are a curse," Zulfikar cried. "I am Wakanda," Tannur answered. They met in battle. Steel shivered against claw. Zulfikar's blade flashed and burned, but Tannur moved faster than sight. In the end, Tannur's claws found the tyrant's chest. Zulfikar fell. With their leader dead, the Carthaginian ranks broke, and their mighty empire unraveled. Slaves were freed. Prison gates were opened. Among the freed, Tannur found Amanita, his sister, battered but alive. They embraced, and the crying that rose was the sound of chains breaking. Tannur led the survivors back to the ruins of Wakanda. On the charred throne of Jagartha, he stood and spoke. "Never again shall Wakanda bow. Never again shall its children wear chains. The Panther watches. The Panther does not sleep." They crowned him king. They called him Ashbar Tannur, the man born of spirit and blood, the guardian of his people. In time, Wakanda rose again under his watch, stronger and guarded by the Panther's shadow. And so Tannur's name passed into legend. Tannur the Shadowborn, Tannur the Panther King, the warrior who rose from a cave, bound by a blood pact, and shattered the power of an empire to free his people.